What if one of rock's most powerful women was also one of its most dangerous? Grace Slick, queen of acid rock, the voice behind White Rabbit, a woman who didn't just challenge the system, she set it on fire. She broke every rule, lived louder than anyone dared, and nearly destroyed herself in the process. Now, decades later, Joni Mitchell, soft-spoken, revered, the poetic heart of a generation, finally breaks her silence. And what she says about Grace? It's not praise. It's a cautionary tale. She calls her reckless, volatile, unstable, a woman who left emotional wreckage in her wake, on stage, backstage, and behind closed doors. And for the first time, fans are forced to ask, was Grace Slick a rock trailblazer or a ticking time bomb that finally exploded? Let's go back. San Francisco, 1965. The psychedelic revolution is in full bloom. Haight-Ashbury is crawling with long hair, louder music, and anti-war cries. And into this swirling chaos walks Grace Slick, Ivy League-educated, upper-class roots, and a voice that didn't just pierce the air, it commanded it. When she joined Jefferson Airplane, the band was already buzzing. But the moment she stepped in, everything changed. Her presence was seismic. She wasn't just a singer, she was the focal point. She didn't sing like a woman, she sang like a revolution. But the cost of that power was chaos. Start with Janis Joplin. They were never enemies, not publicly. But privately, insiders say the tension was real. Janis came from deep pain, a Texas outsider who fought for every scrap of love, fame, and dignity. Grace came from money. She chose rebellion. Janis needed it to survive. Janis sang to bleed. Grace sang to provoke. They were thrown into the same spotlight, but walked in with wildly different scars. Photos show smiles. Backstage, it was resentment, comparison, cold silence. Then came Jim Morrison. If anyone mirrored Grace's raw power, it was him. The two collided like gasoline and fire. They drank together, screamed at each other, and tried to outshock everyone in the room. No romance, no poetry, just pure, dangerous ego. Their relationship was a high-speed collision of two minds equally determined to lose control, and it nearly destroyed them both. Inside Jefferson Airplane, things weren't calmer. Marty Balin, founding member, creative leader, was suddenly overshadowed. Grace took the spotlight and never gave it back. Marty resented her. She didn't care. She mocked him, challenged him, and made the band her own. By the time Balin left the band, he didn't just walk away from the music. He walked away from the war zone it had become. Then came Paul Kantner, her bandmate, her lover, the father of her daughter, China. They were partners in every way, until they weren't. Their love was turbulent, explosive, filled with passion, sure, but also fights, accusations, meltdowns. They brought out the best in each other musically, but emotionally, they were a disaster. Even having a child together couldn't fix what fame, pressure, and addiction had already destroyed. And then came 1978, Germany. Grace Slick stumbles on stage during a Jefferson Starship show. Drunk, slurring, barely coherent. She begins mocking the audience. Then it gets worse. She raises her hand in a Nazi salute. The crowd is horrified. The band is speechless. The show ends in disgrace. Grace Slick, once the face of fearless feminism in rock, is fired from her own band, publicly, humiliatingly, and she disappears into a tailspin of addiction and isolation. But her fall wasn't sudden. It had been happening for years. Grace's drinking had escalated. She'd been arrested multiple times, including once for pointing a loaded gun at a police officer while drunk in her home. Her relationships collapsed under the weight of her volatility. Bandmates stopped calling. Producers stopped booking. Friends stepped back. Even her daughter struggled to stay close. Grace had become the woman everyone admired from a distance, but feared up close. And now, Joni Mitchell confirms it all. Not in a tabloid, not in passing, but in her own words. She calls Grace a woman who could never quite contain her own fire, someone who burned down every bridge she crossed, even when she didn't mean to. Grace Slick remains unforgettable. She broke rules no one else dared touch. She screamed when others whispered. She challenged every man in the room and won. Her voice was a weapon, her mind unfiltered, her life a cautionary tale, a triumph, a tragedy, all rolled into one. She was wild, she was reckless, she was brilliant, and she was also broken. But that's what makes her story matter. Because in the end, Grace Slick didn't just survive rock and roll, she became it. Sharp, loud, explosive, unforgivable. She wasn't here to be understood. She was here to make sure no one ever forgot her. And they didn't, because the world only gets one Grace Slick, and it barely survived her.